Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, have any of you ever heard of the Swiss industrial architect Karl Arnold Sickin-Bronner? He should really be renowned as a significant industrial architect due to his extensive and internationally oeuvre. By the end of the 19th century, he had built numerous factory buildings throughout Europe and beyond. He planned entire industrial zones from scratch and designed major factories for numerous established industrial companies. He also developed new materials and designs. In actual fact, he could be regarded as one of the first specialized industrial architects. Despite this, though, Karl Arnold Sickin-Bronner remains almost unknown and forgotten today. Why is this so, and how can this be rectified? To begin with, I'd like to briefly introduce you to the Swiss designer of industrial buildings. Then I'd like to investigate the reasons why this industrial architect is hardly known, and also how difficult it is to research his buildings. I would like to share a few concrete findings and a few general thoughts on my study of his work, which has been ongoing for many years. You see here a picture of a portrait of Sickin as a young man, middle-aged, and as an older man. So who was this industrial architect, and how did he become an architect? Karl Arnold Sickin-Bronner was born on January the 25th in 1845 in Uznach, a small commune near Lake Zurich. His father, Johann Michael Sickin, a red-collar dyer, was an immigrant from Alsace, and his mother, Elisabeth Solivo, came from a family of manufacturers in Männedorf near Zurich. After primary school, the manufacturer's son attended the industrial school in St. Gallen. Afterwards, he completed an internship at the Rüti machine factory. 2 years later, in 1863, the 18-year-old enrolled in the mechanical engineering department at the Polytechnic in Zurich, today's ETH. However, he left the university prematurely, apparently due to his rather laissez-faire attitude to his studies. Instead, Sickin continued his education by gaining work experience. First, he worked in the engineering company called Danek & Co. in Prague, and then back in Switzerland at Kaspar Honecker machine factory in Rüti. Kaspar Honecker invented the famous Honecker loom, and his machine factory in Rüti in the Zürcher Oberland produced looms and weaving machines and exported them internationally. Within this company, Sickin apparently mainly dealt with the assembly and the installation of the weaving machines and the necessary spaces required for them. In order to be able to serve their clients in a holistic manner, the Rüti machine factory also advised their clients on the appropriate architectural structure for the weaving machines. You see here the Rüti machine factory, and Sika was certainly involved in the extension of this factory to new buildings with the shed roofs in 1874 and later. You see here the, There are some sheds behind the gable front. There are these shed buildings. Something like this. Sika was clever enough to recognize the niche market for an architect specialized in factory construction. In 1879, the year he married Georgine Laura Bronner, he founded his own business in Rüti called C. Sika Bronner Civil Engineer. Soon afterwards, he presented his firm as a specialist company for modern factory construction, listing a range of different factory typologies. On the one hand, Sika offered turnkey building solutions, and on the other hand, submitted the project plans to local builders for execution. I saw a very similar model of a shed roof construction yesterday at the Technical Museum in Prague, Národní Museum, like used for showing the clients. Here the letter paper of Sika and Bronner indicating the range of factories offered. Two primary sources provided information about Sika's buildings. On the one hand, his obituary published in the Swiss construction magazine, Schweizerische Bauzeitung, and on the other hand, the partial bequest kept at the GTA archive at the ETH in Zurich. After Sika died unexpectedly from an illness on November the 25th, 1899, the Swiss Construction Journal wrote, I quote, "Colleague Sika was one of the most important and busiest specialists in factory complexes on the European continent. The sheer number of industrial plants which he designed, either in part or to the last detail, during to the past 2 decades is astonishing. The field of activity of the deceased and extended from the south of Italy all the way to Finland. More than 250 factories at home and abroad are currently and will remain in the future a testament of the work of this esteemed and much loved man." End of the quote. After Sika's untimely death, the manager, Hilarius Knobel, successfully continued managing the busy office under the name Sika and Knobel. More than likely, until his death in 1921, when he simply used his own name, H. Knobel. I soon realized that Sika and Knobel's bequest, which is located at the ETH Zurich, is certainly incomplete. There are references about 234 buildings by Sika and by Knobel in this bequest. Unfortunately, there are usually only single plans, sometimes even those of unbuilt projects, and there are hardly any written documents. Nevertheless, I could tease out a few more references. According to a letter, there was a branch of the office in Vienna, and according to certain plan signatures, another branch in Prague. I managed to find other informations in the literature, including journal advertisements. Like this one, an advertisement of the Fußbodenbelag Eubiolith. Or another one for the roof, for roof construction and skylights. There are more of these advertisements. It's highly likely that Sika was involved in the invention of the building material Eubiolith, a floor covering made of magnesite-bound composite wood concrete, which can be poured seamlessly. As a result, his nephew Emil Sika produced Eubiolith, for which he filed various patents. Sika created a construction system for gable roof skylights, which included ceilingless glazing and rainwater drainage through the round cast iron columns. Thus, the factory roofs could be largely maintenance-free. You see here a schematic drawing of this Sika factory building typology with this is special roof construction with the skylights and the columns with taking the water down. Initially, his inventions served his own construction projects. For instance, Sika established a new factory typology, the single-story factory hall, lit from above, which could expand on all sides, and in principle could be endlessly extended. Initially, this type of plant was especially used for weaving mills and spinning mills, but soon also for businesses in machine and electrical industry. When his innovations, the conceptually endless spaces, but also his rational grid-patterned floor plans and standardized components, Sika made a significant contribution to the modernization of industrial architecture. From a total of around 250 buildings that Sika planned, I would show you a few selected examples situated in Zurich. These were buildings belong to among the most famous companies in the city. One more drawing of his roof system. Here the first example, the Rote Fabrik, or Red Factory, is a complex of dark red masonry buildings on the shores of Lake Zurich, which is well known throughout Switzerland as it has served as a cultural center since the 1970s. Built between 1893 and 1897 for the silk weaving mill Henneberg, this factory consists of a triple-story administration building, a double-story weaving hall, and along the Seestrasse, and finally the single-story halls built at the rear. It was the largest and most stately manufacturing complex among the various and numerous silk production factories in Zurich. As he often did, Sika used neo-Renaissance facades to give the production halls a stately appearance. Characteristic of Sika's architecture are the gable roof skylights, as well as the transmission system in the basement, which allowed the looms to be safely powered from below. You see here the whole complex with this building in this plan with the machines in the basement and the weaving hall in the first floor. Here's some plans from his bequests of the facade. No windows to the street, but just roof lights. You can see a lot here, but it's the total plan of the weaving hall with this great hall here and indicated where the machines should be placed. Yeah. That's how it looked originally at the street, and how it looks today as converted into a control complex. With some changes, as you remark here, these were later changes to this building. The next is the Escher Wyss machine factory in Zurich. When the engineering factory Escher Wyss and Company moved from the city center to the new industrial area in 1894, it was the largest industrial enterprise in Switzerland. The new buildings were designed by Sika, but were constructed by the engineering and construction company Locher & Co. from Zurich. Not only did the conceptual design and the various huge halls correspond to Sika's plans, but also their expandability and the entire new complex plan layout with the industrial tracks, streets, and open spaces apparently all came from Sika. Some of these buildings are still in use today, but most have been more or less converted or rebuilt in recent decades. What you see on the right-hand side is a plan of this building here. It's a ship building. Mid in Zurich, they build ships and export it all over Europe and abroad, mostly for lakes and for rivers. And so they had to bring the ships, deliver the ships by train in here. You see here this particular hall for the ships. It's not exactly, but nearly as the plan from Sika. And here is a picture from inside when they not only use ships, but also turbines. and today as a theater room, and there are other clubs and jazz clubs and so on built inside 20 years ago. It's called Schiffbau today, and it's a very well-known place in Zurich. So it's a famous conversion of an industrial site. I go on with the Oerlikon machine factory. Towards the end of the 19th century, Oerlikon machine factory shifted its production of machine tools and looms motors more and more to electric machines. This change proved to be forward-looking and lucrative. From 1889, at the latest, Séquin worked for the Oerlikon machine factory. He first designed their new administration building on the tracks. In 1891, he designed an extension of the electrical workshop, and in 1896, he designed a large assembly hall. Later, these were followed by other buildings on the extensive industrial area. In recent decades, a new development has been completed on the former industrial side, so only a few halls still remain today. The iconic administration building has been shifted for a few meters some years ago. So you see here the administration building and the older part of the shed halls here, but these huge halls for the electric department from Séquin later extended with new, more halls beyond. And on the right-hand side, a plan of the administration building, as in the bequest of Séquin, and how it was executed with a bit more details of decoration. And here a plan of this great hall. This one here, with this facade that looks really modern, very rational style, with the steel constructions and the bricks between and the huge windows.
When was it built?
That was 1896. That's how it looks when it should be converted, but it doesn't exist anymore. There are only a few smaller halls remaining today. But the administration building, as I said, was shifted on tracks. You see here, they lifted it on tracks and shifted it for 50 meters around because they needed more place for the train station and for the, you see here, they will get one more track here. Finally, to my extensive research on the Swiss industrial architect Karl Arnold Séquin-Bronner, I would like to share some of my hypotheses with you. Firstly, in terms of research, industrial architectures belong to a degree to industrial archaeology and to architectural history, and also to a degree to civil engineering. But it doesn't fit perfectly to any of these categories. As a research topic, indeed, industrial architecture isn't well established. The topic lies somewhere between established categories and is not fully recognized by either one or the other discipline. Karl Arnold Sicken-Bronner called himself a civil engineer and also worked as an architect and an entrepreneur, so he wouldn't really fit into any of these categories used today. Secondly, industrial architecture is utilitarian architecture. Generally, the owners have little interest in a scientific evaluation and certainly not in getting heritage preservation classification of their industrial buildings. Archives of industrial companies that close down their operations are often disposed of, so archival materials about the buildings often don't exist. When industrial buildings are demolished, any sources and documentations are often lost. In any event, the sources of the Sickens buildings are difficult to find today. Both the buildings themselves and the plans seem to be disappearing at an ever-increasing rate. Thirdly, valuable industrial buildings can't be adequately preserved just by the virtue of having a heritage preservation listing. On the one hand, monument preservation lacks a general overview and a specific knowledge. On the other hand, businesses and politicians often oppose the preservation of industrial buildings due to the potential high costs involved in maintaining them, due to their location, scale, and image. Sadly, many of Sickens' buildings have already disappeared or are disappearing without their significance having been fully recognized. Dear colleagues, I'm sure you already gather, my theory looks at the difficulty of loss, losing, and forgetting. I would go so far as to say that the demolition and loss of industrial buildings can, in some circumstances, leaving serious gaps in architectural historiography. Thank you for your attention.